Hey everybody, Lisa from Quilting in the Valley. We're going to talk about the third tip to perfect your quilting, and that's pressing. So the first one was piecing your accurate 1/4 inch seam. The second one was cutting, making sure you're right on the money with your cutting. And the third one is pressing. If you do those three things, your quilts will come out much better, more accurate, and easier. Okay, pressing. There's all kinds of irons out on the market, but all of them work in one way. You put it down on the fabric and you either iron or you press. So when you're quilting or piecing, you want to press. You don't want to iron. So you see how this is a half square triangle going on right here? This is bias edges right here. So if I was ironing and say I'm using steam or say I'm using best press and it's wet and I'm pushing on it, I'm stretching all that bias out. Every time I do that, it stretches that bias. When I'm pressing, I'm just that makes sure I'm not distorting any of my seams or stretching anything out of alignment. Let's talk a little bit about open seams versus closed seams. There are some quilts that are going to require that you do an open seam. And that is just to avoid bulk when you have a bunch of things coming together. And it's also so we can see the join points when you're doing some of the, what would that be? Like the tulip pink quilts, like some of the, trying to think who else. The Hexenmore and the Super Sidekick rulers where they have those angles that come in at weird, not 90 degrees. And in order to see where your seam intersection is, you really have to have an open seam. And that's fine for those quilts. For the most part, though, you're going to want to have your seams to one side, and that's because it makes your seam stronger. When you put this on a long arm and you put it on the frame and it stretches from this pole to this pole on your long arm frame, if you've got open seams, the only thing holding that seam together is the thread. So you're going to see sometimes your batting stick out and maybe get a little bit of furring coming up from your batting. When you have a seam pressed to one side, you've got a little bit of protection there that covers your thread and gives you fabric to fabric. And that way you're not getting quite as much of the open seams going on because this fabric pressed that way and this fabric pressed that way. So all of that is covered. Anyway, that's the difference between your open seams, your closed seams. Do what feels right for you. If you really like to do it one way versus the other, then by golly, do it that way. But get yourself a good iron. Use best press. I don't use the homemade vodka stuff because I don't like the starch that's left over. And that starch, I've had silverfish before. I live in an old house, and older houses have silverfish. Newer houses sometimes have silverfish, and they are attracted to things with starch in them, and that's why I don't use the stuff you make with the vodka. I use best press. It doesn't cost that much. If you use a spray mister, one of those neat spray mister bottles, it makes it last so much longer on top of that. So anyway, do what feels right for you. If you like the vodka stuff, use the vodka stuff. You like the best press, use the best press. If you like flatter, use flatter. Do what's right for you, but press. Don't iron. Get yourself a travel iron for your classes and retreats. Get yourself a nice full-size iron for your sewing room. This is the Panasonic Quilters iron. It's the 360, so it's pointy on both ends, and it doesn't have a cord, which is really helpful when you're doing borders and putting on binding. So get yourself a good iron. Take care of it. Use some pressing aid, either steam, like with the Laura Star, this big iron I've got here, or best press or flatter or one of those other alternatives with your other irons. Okay, we'll see you next time.